A few weeks ago, Google finally brought a desktop mode to Pixel phones. The way it works is simple. You plug your phone into a monitor, use Bluetooth to connect a mouse and keyboard, and boom, your phone is now a desktop computer. I've been playing around with this for the past few weeks, and while I am very excited about what Google has done with this so far, unfortunately, it's not quite ready for much real-world use. First, I'm going to go over setting up the new Pixel desktop mode in case you want to give this a shot for yourself. Then I'm going to go over what works well with it, and then wrap things up by going over the various issues I faced. So let's go over the setup first. Honestly, this is really easy to do. First, you need to be using a Pixel 8 or newer, and it needs to be running the most recent version of Android. So make sure you're all up to date with that. If you have a Pixel 7 or something older, unfortunately, this isn't going to work for you because older Pixels lack the hardware support for DisplayPort alternate mode. This is a hardware level limitation, so if using this desktop mode is really important to you, you're going to need to upgrade your phone. To connect your phone to your monitor, the easiest thing to do would be to use a screen that natively supports USB-C connections. If you have that, it's literally as simple as plugging in your phone to the monitor and then choosing the desktop button. However, my big, nice monitor here doesn't support USB-C connectivity. In those cases, you'll need an adapter of some kind or a dongle like this. You can get something like this for about $25, so it's much cheaper than buying a new USB-C monitor. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to grab a good one. Using this dongle allows you to connect your phone to pretty much any monitor. It also allows your phone to receive power and connect all sorts of devices and storage solutions. You can also connect your mouse and keyboard using cables if you want as little latency as possible. Of course, the cleanest way to connect your mouse and keyboard is to use Bluetooth. This process will be different for you depending on your gear, but you essentially just trigger the connection on your hardware and then pair them on your phone. Once you've got all that setup done, you'll have this: a monitor with your phone's home screen but in desktop style layout, a connected keyboard, and a connected mouse. Anyone who's familiar with Windows will feel very comfortable here. You've got your commonly used apps down here, you've got a shortcut to your app drawer over here, and Android's typical 3-button controls, which allow you to go back, go home, or open up your recent apps. So it's important to note here that this is all the same stuff from your phone, just laid out differently. In other words, if you open up the Play Store here, it's the exact same Play Store app that appears on your phone. If I were to unplug the phone right now, the same Play Store app would be up and running on it, because it's up and running here. This might all seem obvious, but this is actually very different from how other companies do this. Samsung's DeX system, for example, actually creates a whole new desktop layer when you use it. This allows you to have your desktop act as one thing and your phone act as another, keeping both systems separate. They are both still Android and still based on the same apps, but they are different layers. But with Google's implementation here, everything is the same. You can see that the wallpaper is the same, the most used apps are just from the dock, and on and on. I'll touch more on this a bit later. So this approach has some positives and negatives to it. Starting with the positives, it really does make for a very smooth transition from phone to desktop or from desktop to phone. For example, I could be working on a script in desktop mode and then realize I need to run off and catch a train. I can simply unplug my Pixel, swipe up to see my recent apps, and look at that, the script is still right there, just where I left off. Then, when I get back home, I can plug the phone back in, get the desktop mode fired up, and there we go. I'm back to writing my script again. Because I have all this space on my desktop, I can multitask really easily. Let's say I'm working on that script and need a second window open for doing research. Well, I can drag the script over here, and then drag a Chrome browser over to the other side, and now I have a split screen just like I can do on a normal operating system. I can use my mouse scroll wheel to navigate around either window, which is very intuitive. This monitor doesn't support touch, but if it did, I could also swipe right onto the screen, which would be pretty cool. So if you're like me though, one of the things you rely on the most when using a laptop or desktop is keyboard shortcuts. For example, I shouldn't have needed to use my mouse to drag these two windows to the right or the left. Thankfully, the Pixel desktop mode supports keyboard shortcuts. In the case of snapping these windows, I can just hit the Windows key and then one of the bracket keys to snap the window automatically to either the right or the left. If you have a Mac-based keyboard, this will also work with the Command key instead. There are dozens of keyboard shortcuts available, many of which will be familiar to Chrome OS users, so use Google to find the ones that you need. So what about notifications? Google set this up to be very similar to how it is on your phone or tablet. Up here, you can click and drag to see your notification dropdown, including all your quick setting tiles. You can also just click it if you want, or if you're using a trackpad, use 3 fingers to swipe down. So Google gives you lots of options. Remember, this is all exactly the same as you have it on your phone. So pay no attention to my layout here, as yours can be very different. Either way, it all works the same. So you can swipe away notifications if you want, or you can click on them to open up things in the specific app. You can also have your power shortcuts down here and a quick link to Android settings. So far, everything I've talked about has been pretty cool. Desktop mode on Pixels is easy to set up, incredibly familiar to use, and supports many of the desktop features you already know and love. But now that I'm in Android settings, I'm going to talk about the real problems Google needs to fix if it wants people to actually use this regularly. The first thing I want to emphasize is that anything I change here in Android settings will change not just in desktop mode, but also when I'm simply using my phone. For example, lots of people might have their phone set to turn off the screen after 30 seconds of idle time. This is the default setting and most people don't change it. But with desktop mode, you don't want your monitor turning off every 30 seconds. If you're reading a document and forget to move your mouse while doing so, the screen will just shut off on you. So then you'd come to Android settings to change that to something longer, like maybe 5 minutes or so. But since that also changes it for your phone when you're not connected to desktop mode, your phone will also keep the display on for 5 minutes. Because Google has no separation between these two modes, you'll need to either remember to change this setting every time you go from mode to mode, pick something that works in both situations, or create different users on your phones with different preferences. In my opinion, all those options aren't nearly as convenient as just having a timeout option for your desktop that is different from the one you use on your phone. This problem gets even more complicated when you focus on customization. I've just set this photo of Lon and me as my desktop wallpaper, which looks fine, but it looks terrible on my phone. So then I go into wallpapers on my phone and change it to one of the stock Living Universe wallpapers that come with Pixels. Well, live wallpapers don't work on desktop at all. So now I have this boring gray slate for my wallpaper. Oh, and just so you know, this isn't really a desktop. You can't put icons here, there's no widgets, no shortcuts, it's just a wallpaper, which is pretty lame. Anyway, one more example of how desktop mode and phone mode should be separated is with Chrome. I might pull up YouTube in Chrome and realize I want to see it in desktop view. So I change that in Chrome settings, and now it looks better here. But now, if I open the YouTube web page in Chrome on my phone, it will be in desktop view there, which I might not want. I realize most people will just use the YouTube app, but I wanted to show how this works in Chrome, and this is also a great way to remind you to like and subscribe. So you see the problem here. The way I want things on my phone might not be how I want them on my desktop. But since there's no difference between the two systems, I'm stuck either figuring out things that work both ways or committing to changing things every time I go from mode to mode. Both of those are not ideal. There are also a few fundamental problems here that Google has yet to address. This monitor I'm working on is in a 16:9 aspect ratio, which is very common. However, 16:10 aspect ratios are really popular too, but the Pixel desktop mode doesn't support that ratio. This right here is a really cool product from a company called NextDock. It's a laptop shell. In other words, it looks like a laptop, but there's no computer inside. Instead, it's specifically designed to run on something else that you plug into it, like a Raspberry Pi, or in this case, a smartphone. But you'll notice here that this NextDock has a 16:10 display, so everything looks wonky with my Pixel connected to it. This is not NextDock's fault, this is Google's fault. There's no reason why Google couldn't support outputting to any number of aspect ratios, but right now, today, all that's supported are different resolutions of 16:9. This is really upsetting because I love this NextDock device and it would have been so cool to use it while traveling, but I certainly don't want to use it when Google makes it look like this. Speaking of which, high refresh rates also aren't supported in desktop mode. One of the most common use cases for a desktop mode on a smartphone is being able to play mobile games with a keyboard and mouse. That works just fine here, but the refresh rate is locked to 60 Hz. This monitor is capable of going all the way to 144 Hz, and the Pixel 10 Pro XL supports a 120 Hz refresh rate on its native display. But once you go into desktop mode, you're stuck at 60 Hz. And finally, the biggest problem is this. That's right, if you turn off your phone's display, it locks you out of desktop mode. Even if you remove all security from your phone, you'll still need to have your Pixel's display on the entire time you're using it in desktop mode. This is so dumb. Even if none of the other problems existed, this alone would be enough to put me off from using desktop mode in any real-world scenario. So where does this leave us? The desktop mode on Pixels is off to a good start, but it's just not good enough for people to actually use it as a laptop or desktop replacement. Sure, if all you want is to be able to do some very basic stuff in desktop mode for a few minutes, that is totally possible as it is today. But if you seriously want to use your phone in desktop mode for multiple hours of work or gaming, you're probably going to be more frustrated than anything else. In Google's defense, this system is pretty much brand new. It'll only get better from here. But as it is right now, I think desktop mode needs to cook a little bit longer before I'd even think about using it in place of a traditional laptop or desktop. All right, so now it's time for you to tell me what you think. Jump down in the comments and let me know what you think of desktop mode on Pixels so far, and definitely tell me what real-world use cases you have for a system like this. Before you head off, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want to check out another video of mine that I think you'll find interesting, check out this one here, where I talk about the imaginary Google products that I really wish were coming in 2026. I'll see you all down in the comments.